friend, welcome. We're glad you're joining us for Soul Care with Mindy, and I'm joined here again today with Lacey Mason.
Hello.
Live from LA. And we're in our studio area here near Boulder, Colorado, where Soul Care is based, and we're just delighted to be with you. And today, I'm excited for you to hear Lacey. You've heard her before. She's an amazing qualitative researcher who's spent most of her career listening very deeply to people's stories at a level that most of us, we try to listen well, but Lacey knows how to listen very deeply, right? And she captures motivations and narratives and what's going on in people's minds that impacts their choices and their behaviors. And that's a really good skill set to have when you're studying consumer goods and how people purchase things or foods or products. But when it comes to matters of the soul, her depth of understanding of spiritual formation and leadership and the soul and soul care allows her to listen on our topic to people who are talking about their life with God in the context of their ministry. And so I have learned so much from this body of research that we're going to go through a little bit today, and I am sure that you will as well, and you'll find connections to your own journey and your own soul's health as we talk through, and mostly I just try to pepper you with as many questions as I can to get out of the way. So first, what is it we're going to learn about, Lacey?
Well, we had the opportunity to work with a partner of Soul Care's a couple years ago on a research project that focused on the flourishing and soul health of missionaries and a few pastors, but primarily missionaries who are living and serving in the global South. Now, as a researcher, that's a huge geography, half the planet. So it was exciting for me to get to work on a project with this scope. But we were able to have some really deep, meaningful conversations with people who are currently in the field mostly, some of them who have come out of the field. The objective was to get a deeper understanding of what is the state of the soul health among people who are serving in missions in the global South. There is a lot of attrition. There are a lot of people who are coming out of the field. There are a lot of people who are coming out of the field who are deeply unwell, who are even experiencing PTSD and things like that. And the bigger question is, I think around what does it mean for the people and the organizations and the churches who are supporting our brothers and sisters who are doing this work? What do we need to know and understand so that we can be better supporters and partners for them?
Totally. And one of the things I've always appreciated about your work, but especially as it related to this then project that obviously I care a ton about, is that when we get data, there's this much attrition, this many people aren't returning, this many people left after 6 months, after we trained them for 2 years, and then they're gone. You always say that quantitative research, the data, tells you what's happening, but we have to get to qualitative research to understand why. And in an absence of rigorous understanding of why, I would encounter the leaders of these missions organizations who would be very persuaded of the reason why. And it would, the lack of discipleship in the church, and there's this and there's that. And there were all these stories that we would spin up about answering the why. And so I've just appreciated how you came with such empathy and rigor. And you said that this sort of and scope matched some of the larger scale projects you've done in the marketplace. And I think that's a validating idea, because somebody could be like, how do you know this is true? You interviewed, I don't know, however many people, but that can't be representative of the topic at large. Can you speak to that kind of right at the front?
Sure, yeah. So when you do quantitative research, surveys, things like that, you need to have a much larger sample in order to be able to detect the patterns, have confidence in those patterns. But when you're doing qualitative research, you are you're looking at the emotional drivers, essentially, of what are the things that are deep inside of us that are guiding our choices, our behaviors, the way we look at life, the way we understand things. And people are more similar emotionally than we are different. We have kind of a limited set of emotions. And those patterns start to emerge more quickly with smaller sample sizes. So this research involves storytelling, going back to different experiences that people have had and having them tell us those stories. Then we do some deeper probing to try to understand what's really going on in those situations. In this study, for example, we were able to interview 37, which is a pretty standard size for a qualitative study.
Like, who would be in other like clients that you did a study of this size for?
Oh, sure. Intel, Harley Davidson, Eli Lilly, Amgen,
that kind of stuff.
Yeah, even on a global scale. But the difference too between qualitative and quantitative is that we're not looking for differences across samples. We're looking for similarities.
Yeah.
So certainly there are nuances. Certainly there are specific things about their experiences based on what geography they're in or what country, or if they're an expat or a native or whatever. But we're kind of looking in this type of study at the commonalities.
Great.
Yeah.
Great.
So we had the very great privilege to speak with 37 people in our study. 17 of them were men, 20 of them were women. 34 of them are currently in country, and 19 of them were native to the global South. 18 of them were Westerners who were, who had moved there to do this work. And about 8 different sending organizations were represented. There were a few in the study who were independent missionaries, maybe sponsored by a church. But overall, there were 8 different organizations.
So this isn't just like a reflection of one particular organization.
Correct.
We had a distribution of environments that were the sending organizations.
Yeah. And then in terms of the geographies that were represented, we had 7 from Latin America, 10 from Africa, 8 from Southeast Asia, 2 from the Middle East, 4 from the Pacific Islands, and 6 from India, Nepal, and Bhutan. So that's a pretty
I just remember
swath of
when we finally got the green light to move forward on this, and you were like, I don't know how we're going to get enough people given the due date for what this project was. Do you remember?
Yes. Oh, yes, I remember.
There were like, within 2 weeks, all of these, which again speaks to how people are ready to have this conversation. At least that's what it told me, is there was a willingness to prioritize this conversation.
Oh, for sure. And we'll talk about why that willingness was there, without question. So I'm just going to briefly walk us through some of the high-level insights, the higher-level learnings, and I'll share some verbatim language. So the way that I do qualitative research, I want to preserve the verbatim language from the respondents. So I don't want to say they said things like this. I want to share this is what they actually said. And so at the end of each project, I'll pull together a composite narrative where I knit together actual language from each of the interviews that sort of helps to paint the picture if you could imagine hearing almost like the perfect interview that hits on all of the themes throughout. That's what the composite narrative represents. So we'll be able to share some of that verbatim language.
And I'm glad you'll be doing that. And I'm glad you have all your material in front of you, because I've been in rooms. I was among the people that you first presented this back to. And it was so emotional to hear people's stories. And so I would just say, for who's listening, you won't be able to help yourself to identify and move into this individual stories, even though it's a compositive narrative. And so, just an invitation to really journey with this. It's been an emotional experience for me every time I've heard you do a readout on this. So be prepared, people. Strap in.
Well, we always start these projects at the beginning wanting to understand, how did you get into whatever the space is that we're studying. So for this project, how did you become a missionary? How did you know that this is something that you wanted to do? And there was a lot of conversation around, certainly the call that they felt that they had received from God to do this kind of work. But most of that was sort of seated in or rooted in this sense of gratitude, this profound, deep sense of gratitude for their salvation, for who God is, for God's love for them, for being a child of God, and wanting to translate that gratitude into an active demonstration of that by sort of giving back, being a part of God's work in the world, being a part of helping other people come to know that deep, profound acceptance and love of God and love from God. So that sense of calling really emerges, brings about this desire to serve God. And there was language shared about serving God with my whole self, with everything that I have, which meant kind of translates into being willing to make a lot of sacrifices for this group of people. This idea of making a lot of personal sacrifices really aligns with that desire to serve God with your whole self. There is this sense that choosing to pursue the call of God is really the most essential way to experience purpose in life. And that nearness to God and alignment with God, doing this kind of vocation.
Kind of a dramatic, sacrificial move.
Yes. So there are some mental models, some implicit narratives under the surface. We all have them. It's what drives all of our behavior, right? And here there are some implicit narratives for ministry, what it means to be in ministry. And some of the themes that emerged around this was sort of this belief that God has fulfilled his promise in their life. Therefore, they must now devote themselves to fulfilling God's purpose in others' lives. And that work tends to, the language that they would use around that work tends to be I need to go there to do that, rather than here. It's out there, outside of myself.
And just for anybody who's just listening, can't see your hand
motions.
motions.
Sorry, right.
When you mean here, when you're saying here,
personal self.
My own life
versus out there, others.
So it's out located external to my life is what I'm doing.
Yes. And so all becomes for the sake of others. The missionary sense of agency, value, and spiritual growth kind of become deferred or secondary to the sake of doing God's work in the world for others. That kind of gets further deepened by the witness of injustice and suffering in the world, which kind of inspires the question then of when there's such deep suffering, how can I care about myself? It's more meaningful, more important to be caring for others. Also, what emerges kind of is this sense of the way that I engage with God, prayer, Bible study, all essential practices, all very good. They start to take on this tone in the language and in the stories of becoming fuel that feeds the engine of service. So rather than practices being in service to your own soul care and soul health, they start to become the fuel that helps to drive the engine of your work. That the more that it's important to do those things so that I can do that work out in the world. And the payoff then becomes measured by do I then have an increased capacity to serve? So what starts to happen is in the research, we start to see this journey of transformation beginning. And this is going to be a journey. We have sort of a model that starts to emerge that's really about a journey from striving to abiding and the differences between those postures and what would need to happen in order for someone to make that transition from a posture of striving in their work to a posture of abiding in their life.
And for some, because I've seen this before, if they don't find that path to abiding, that's when the striving, they bottom out.
Right.
And they must leave. They can't go on.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff.
So, we read leadership books and ministry books and organizational books all the time where the concept of a flywheel is often leveraged as an example of how to create efficient energy that drives the machine of the organization or the motivation and output of the leader, things like that. It's kind of some similar energy here in this story, where we want to have sort of like this missional flywheel, this like vocational flywheel, that there's this anointing of the work, right? That creates that powerful drive, that gratitude, that appreciation that we're talking about. That's sort of the torque that gets the flywheel turning. And the drive is to serve God in a manner that's worthy of who God is. And that's all good. That's great. But if your work is fueled by the narrative that God deserves the ultimate self-sacrifice, and if you have this idea that God will sustain your energy because you're doing God's work, that God will sustain your energy regardless of your own personal need for rest or soul care, then that type of torque, that type of flywheel energy can develop into sort of that can't stop, won't stop work mentality, almost kind of compulsive.
And we put that God language around it, but deep underneath, there could be, I know for my sake, I had all kinds of codependencies, sort of if I don't do it, no one else will, like some very heavy, unquestioned, because as long as I could put a Bible verse around it or make it sound noble or sacrificial even, I didn't have to face the fact that I didn't want to not know who I was if I wasn't doing. Yeah. Those kinds of things. I'm sorry if I don't want to interrupt you.
No, exactly. I mean, but that's why we say that the narratives that drive our behavior are implicit. We're not consciously examining the things that are the stories that we're telling ourselves that keep us doing the things that we're doing in the manner that we're doing them, right? Disruption typically has to happen in order for us to identify, ooh, I think I might have a false narrative here. I think I might be telling myself a story that isn't healthy or that isn't true or, but without that disruption, we just keep operating in the way that we...
Without thinking.
Yeah, exactly. So kind of along with what you're saying, they do report in this study carrying a real burden of responsibility. And this isn't a story. This is true. They are carrying a lot of actual functional responsibility. They're working typically in contexts where there's more labor to be done than laborers. So the story of if I don't do it, it's not going to happen isn't a fallacy.
Nope.
It's true in most cases. It's a reality that they have to deal with. Particularly, they reported this being particularly true after COVID, when so many people have left the field. That flywheel also kind of gets further energized by some other narratives, other stories, leadership that models the can't stop, won't stop mentality like explicitly calling for missionaries to have like an all-in work-life imbalance. We're called to this work. We will give everything to it. And the work does matter. I mean,
it does. I remember hearing people saying, well, the devil never takes a day off. Like,
right.
So obviously you can't either.
Yes.
Yeah.
Those kinds of stories are really active here. Of course, if you are part of a sending organization where the organizational culture within it really deprioritizes soul care, you know, that is something that is kind of driving this flywheel. And just the apostolic, like entrepreneurial energy of missions contributes to it just in and of itself.
I feel seen.
And church planting.
I feel seen. Yes. It's part of the wiring.
Yeah. And then also that need to really keep up the facade that everything's fine.
Yeah.
I'm good.
For their donors.
Exactly, for their supporters.
Receiving,
right. You can't send your support letter to your donors saying, I'm really tired and I haven't had a day off. You know, there's a fear that people lose confidence in you. So these are all the fuel sources that are really like torquing up that flywheel. However, what we know to be true about even how flywheels operate within actual machines is that if they start to become imbalanced, they're not giving like the right kind of power delivery to the machine, to the engine, and they can cause a lot of damage if they start to become wobbly. So if we take that metaphor and we kind of apply it to what's happening in this study with the missionaries, they'll often start when their flywheel gets wobbly from the natural consequences of those narratives.
Correct.
They'll start to exhibit some warning signs that will highlight their lack of flourishing and then the forthcoming burnout. So in terms of their flourishing, flourishing often has many dimensions to it. You can slice it and dice it in different ways. Within this study, they talk about financial, relational, mental and physical, spiritual, physical safety, depending on the context that they're living in, vocational flourishing, and familial, like what's happening within their families. And they're reporting a lot of deficits across all of these. But the main one that came up over and over and over again is the relational deficit.
Really?
Yeah. That's where they report feeling the greatest challenge.
I've heard you do this so many times, and I keep thinking it's going to be a cluster of 2 or 3 things, and I always forget. That was the
primary one. Yeah, so much isolation, loneliness. Even when you're there with a team, there's still can be a real sense of isolation because you don't feel like you can open up to people about what's happening in your interior, what's happening in your emotional and your spiritual life, maybe what's happening in your marriage, for fear that people will lose confidence in you. Your leaders might lose confidence in you. Your team that you're managing,
right?
You know,
or fear that will they know how to hold that space?
Sure.
Like I don't know that I want to tell the people I happen to be around what's actually going on going on inside because I don't trust that they would steward that well.
Right.
I don't even know what to say to myself. I don't think that person knows what to say to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which kind of brings us to, what you were mentioning at the beginning, the willingness to have this conversation. They were not just willing, but really excited to have this conversation with me and the other researcher.
I remember you talking about that.
Because they would say, nobody ever calls to check on me. Nobody's asking me how I am. I don't have anyone to talk to. I've never shared this with anyone. There was a pastor in Uganda who we interviewed who sent me an email after the fact saying, thank you so much for letting me have this conversation with you. I can't talk to people about what this is really like for me because my congregation expects me to never have any problems or challenges. So I can't own what's happening in my life, in my soul, in my physical body, you know.
And you're like, I've done research all my whole life. I'm not used to people responding with thank you.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, it is rare that anybody sits down to listen to us talk about ourselves and our lives for an hour. Mm-hmm. So even when I do research on paper towels, sometimes they're like, this was really helpful.
Are you serious?
I'm really glad we did this. Thank you for your time.
Lacey, you're just angelic. It's that gift you have.
But in talking about all these challenges, I did want to share some of the verbatims from the composite narrative from this part of the study. So I'll just start. Being in missions has been devastatingly lonely. The operational metaphor that I would use is that I consider myself to be somewhere in middle management of the corporation of the kingdom of heaven, where God is the CEO and I am somehow, in charge of the bottom line, souls saved for his kingdom. That's the currency, if you will. And so he has no particular personal interest in getting to know me, one of his lower employees, but he's interested in investing in me as far as it will affect his bottom line. So, sending me away for trainings and upskilling me, or even giving me the various gifts of the Holy Spirit to operate in his name, none of that was relationship forming or relationship oriented. It was performative in nature. And when you have a culture that everybody in the culture kind of has that same perspective, there's a certain inability to dive into a deeper level of contentedness because everybody's kind of well-trained to just compare themselves with one another. So I want to call out that for this person, that's not where they started in terms of the way that they saw this work or their relationship with God, but this is the place that they've come to.
Right. That wasn't part of the animating idea.
Exactly.
It was out of love, out of relationship.
Right.
But these are the things that get lost along the way.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a good comment.
Yeah. These are some other participants. Having hot water, running water, being able to charge our phones at any time, just certain things like that become foreign to us. It's like you're always in survivor mode. Crisis is always a way of life here. Somebody dies or beats their kid or loses their job or kills themselves. When those things happen, it's difficult to tell that person who you care for that you'll talk to them a few days from now. The national leadership would get upset with me when I tried to practice rest, but even Jesus was able to walk away. Nobody had told me that when you get into ministry or mission or leadership, it's not emphasized how much you have to care for your own soul or self. That was not present for me. Every message I got from leaders was that if you feel like you're working hard, it's not hard enough. And then another, ministry here was working full-time, going to school at night, and then serving in ministry from midnight till 6 a.m. on the weekends. If I went to the leaders to say I'm tired, then I'd be looked down upon. They would say that this was for God. Push me, It's the idea that you do it for God, so it's for free, and it takes all your resources and power and money and strength. There's this thinking that I'm anointed and called to do something so I can be superhuman, like Elijah outrunning the chariots or making the sun stand still. If I'm called, then I'm unstoppable. So if there's a weakness, that calls into question your calling and anointing. So there's that weird, twisted theology that does not help people to be human, and it ignores things like Jesus taking a nap in a boat or just praying. Stuff like that throws the balance off. So you don't see that stuff anymore.
Meaning when you read your Bible, you don't even see those things.
Right.
You only see the high challenge, high call.
Yeah. There are times when I want to give up. I run out of food and money and I'm isolated and in culture shock. And times when I get so frustrated that the ministry method is do. It's never about checking in and seeing if I'm okay. People crash and burn in their faith. They were like, I'm not discipling people, I'm bad, or I've not shared the gospel, I'm not okay. There have been times when I got sick, so sick I couldn't sleep or have time with God, when I should have canceled a meeting with someone, but if I cancel, how will she hear the gospel? I thought that I have to share the gospel, so I am worthy of the gospel. But really, I just felt like a failure. I raised support and moved here. Instead of meeting with a student, I should rest. To not meet said I was a failure, a fraud, weak. I was all hype. I'm here now, and it's not what I thought it would be. I knew that I should be here, but is it supposed to be like this? It's easy to feel the shame. So it goes on and on and on for pages and pages and pages. These are different people. This is not the experience of one person.
Right.
And this is not to say that every missionary who goes out into the field has this experience.
No.
But there's too many of these similar stories to ignore the common experiences and themes that are there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So needless to say, that flywheel becomes imbalanced. And then what? So for many of them, and remember, we're trying to understand, where's this attrition coming from, right? This is where it's coming from. For many of them, the warning signs of lack of flourishing start to coalesce to form a wedge that jams up that flywheel that they've been relying on to create the energy. All those narratives that help you believe that you're superhuman and that you don't have to recognize your own human limits start to fall apart, right? It all gets really wobbly. And the awakening to the realities of exhaustion and burnout leads them to either, you got one of two options. You either abandon what you're doing, get me out of here, right? Or you have to seek a new approach. You have to figure out a new way to be and to exist. And so you kind of have to choose the path forward. You can succumb to the burnout or drop out, or you have to find a new stage in your formational journey. And this sort of takes us into the second, if we look at this journey in three pieces, you could be in that first part, the starting out, the experiencing of the breaking down of the narratives, the breaking down of the machine, right? This middle part is the figuring out how to get on a path of healing.
Mm-hmm. And I wonder if we'll need to pause and address that the next time you're in town.
Oh, cliffhanger?
It is a cliffhanger.
Okay.
I don't know how we're doing on timing. Are we good? All right. I want to hear the rest. But I just wanted to be careful of, then let's go. We can cut all however we need. But Lacey, I'm already in tears. I don't know if I can handle hearing.
It's very, to use your word, it's very achy.
It is so achy.
Yeah.
And so, yes, let's get beyond that.
Okay, part two.
Part two. Here we are.
Go. Where do we? How do we get on this new path? The main thing that helps you get on the new path is having relational support. So most of the respondents in this study described experiencing just an absolute dearth of relational support. It's just the deficit is significant. They need people who they can share their experiences and their struggles and receive non-judgmental care.
That's key, isn't it?
It's key. Non-judgmental care. So this loneliness and isolation and really feelings of abandonment, they feel oftentimes abandoned, just kind of further deepens that need for relationship. They often report not knowing how to find those relationships. Where do you seek them out? What do you do? And we were trying to understand what was their level of awareness around soul care, soul health, practices that are a part of that. It's unsurprisingly about the same as what we see everywhere else. It's not common for us to think about caring for ourselves in that way.
Not yet.
Not yet. So they need a guide or guides to help them find this new path forward. That disruption of the way that they've been operating all of this time is incredibly disorienting.
What would be some examples of a disruption in somebody's life?
Well, you start to experience those physical manifestations of
Okay.
burnout. Your body just won't let you do it anymore. You're
Yep.
sick, or injuries, or things that just won't recover.
Vertigo.
Vertigo, exactly. Depression,
Yep.
mental health challenges, relational fractures, marriages that are suffering.
Right. So a spouse says, I'm not going to do this anymore.
Right.
And the other spouse has to deal with that because that's not going to play well in the mission world.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, disruption in your relationship with God.
Okay. What would that feel like?
That's like, from that one story, you hear the whole identity of God gets transformed into something transactional.
God is the CEO and I'm the mid-level
And
manager.
God's only interested in me in terms of how much I can produce. If you're a missionary and you all of a sudden start having real challenges in your belief in the goodness of God's character, I don't know how. I don't know how you can keep inviting people into, a loving relationship with God. So those are the kinds of disruptions that.
I've talked to people in a more Western context who are even in pastoral ministry, and it's like they come to a point of going, kind of like we just said, I don't know if I believe this anymore, and yet it's my job. I don't know if I believe or I can believe.
Yeah.
And I'm not judging that one way or another, but that's a very disruptive place to get to.
Oh, for sure.
To let that thought in even.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So guides, if you're blessed enough, lucky enough, fortunate enough, I don't even know they don't all report finding guides to help them. But for the ones who do report a guide coming into their story at this juncture, they talk about guides providing really critical resources to helping them get on that forward path. Things like giving them permission to examine what's actually going on and rest, safe places to ask those really hard questions and be honest about, what's going on. People who will validate their struggle and say, yeah, this is real. You're not dramatizing this or, overstating it. I can validate that this is actually happening for you.
Powerful.
Giving them language to be able to talk about it, language that we don't typically have. So all of those things, a guide, and this can be a friend, this can be a spiritual director, this can be a counselor, it could be a pastor, it could be anybody, but just someone who creates this non-judgmental space where you are safe to process all of what's going on.
And really something as simple as that becomes game-changing for someone's journey.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not simple, but it's not like they all needed like some, dramatic thing. It was the simplicity of that safe space.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So if you're able to kind of move into this healing space, kind of this middle phase of the journey, this is where those false narratives are identified and reworked. So you're able to, your implicit narratives will shift. You start to look at the purpose of ministry in a different way. You might have restoration of your relationship with God and your sense of who God is and what God's character is.
Like he's not the CEO.
Correct.
Just only concerned about me in a
Yeah.
performative way.
And your narratives about yourself. My value and worth does not come from how many people I'm witnessing to or
Came to my church.
Yeah, or came to my church or what I've done to impact this community. You start to be able to see yourself as a co-laborer with God as opposed to like carrying the responsibility of all of it yourself. This is where the shift moves from striving to abiding. Really starting to understand what that posture of abiding looks like and feels like and being able to step into that. last phase of this journey, we would call integration. If they're able to do that healing work, they kind of move deeper into a formational journey. They get that proper support. They can move into integration and sort of discover that new sense of self. And that integration phase was highlighted by things like more predictable soul care rhythms, contemplative practices, embracing their human limitations, not like dropping that I'm anointed, therefore I am superhuman, I can push past my limits idea. And again, that identity of God being reframed as well.
Those are big shifts.
Big shifts in addition to the redefinition of success.
Oh, what did that
within
look like?
missions? For many of them, it is helpful to talk to people who are in different stages they're in different places in the stages on the journey throughout the research. The ones who are sort of have completed this transformation are now reflecting back on when I started in missions. My expectation was that success was going to be large scale. I was going to impact a lot of people. And now I've redefined what success in missions looks like. And now I understand it's relational, it's small scale impact, it's individual. It's okay that it might take me 9 years to develop a relationship with a person to get to the point where they trust me enough for me to share the gospel with them. Mm-hmm. And that's okay.
Yeah.
That it's not 900 people.
Yeah.
That it's one.
Yeah.
It also shifts from a them to an us perspective. The work is not, and I'm doing the arm motions again, but the work is not out there with them, but it is here with me, us together.
That is such a big concept that I remember you surfacing when we first learned about this, that they get to the point in this integration of sensing, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but the sensing that it's not like I'm connecting with God so that I can go do the work. It's out of my connection with God is how the work happens out of love, out of freedom, out of flourishing. And yes, there's still great work that happens and is done, but you said co-laboring. That's a big shift.
Yeah. Yes. And not, I'm co-laboring to do something out there with them to change them. It shifts to we are dwelling together, all of us. I share the gospel through shared life.
That's beautiful.
It's a us versus out, us in here versus a them out there. And then ultimately, if you're able to sort of move through this journey, you might even kind of circle back and become a guide yourself.
Probably can't stop it.
A person who steps in to help offer that support.
Yeah, I have this phrase I've heard many years ago, and I repeat it all the time, that who we are determines what we see. And when you've been through a process like that, that is now who you are, and it has changed what you see. And so you can't help encountering other people who are at different places in that journey and then engaging them because you see things with fresh eyes and you bring a different perspective that to them, it's like a breath of fresh air that somebody actually asked me, how am I doing? And they really cared.
Yeah.
Well, that's how you then become a guide. You don't take on the responsibility of it, but you might be part of that new cycle of healing. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. So I typically will pull together just like a handful of core insights from a project at the end of it. And there's 5 core insights that we would share that would hopefully be helpful to our partners who are sending organizations, people who support missionaries, churches. So these core insights are there for you if you're one of those people. All right, core insight number 1, timing matters. The sooner people are introduced into the soul health journey, the more likely they are to stay soul healthy and stay in the field. So if you are a sending organization that is having really honest conversations with them about setting expectations, how to care for yourself, what is soul care, what is soul health, prior to them going into the field, we saw a difference.
Yeah.
For those people who had that kind of training versus the ones who are having to discover it on their own.
It's like somebody's giving them an orientation to things that might not even be real to them at that time.
Exactly.
But when that idea happens, when they find themselves in this place, they have something to go back to.
Yeah. Yep. Core insight 2, perspective matters. Journeys of transformation are cyclical, and this is true for all of us, not this journey of transformation. Formation is not linear, it's cyclical. Nothing in life is ever up and to the right, you know? And so as we grow and transform in life, we're going to cycle through it, and we're going to cycle around and back around again. So it is likely for these individuals to cycle in and out of phases of the journey, just like it's likely for all of us to cycle through phases of our journey as well over the course of time. Core insight 3, intentionality matters. Those who were associated with organizations that embrace an abiding narrative and support soul care rhythms have a much smoother path toward integration and demonstrated less evidence of burnout. But core insight number 4, behavior matters. Those associated with sending organizations will take their cues from their leadership's soul health actions. So permission to engage in soul care is more influenced by what leaders do than what they say. So even if you're operating as a leader within an organization and you are saying to your people, you have permission and encouragement to care for yourself, but you as their manager, you as their leader are not modeling that for them in a way that they see you doing that in your own life. It undermines the permission that you have given, that verbal permission that you have given.
They sometimes call it the silent curriculum. There's the thing that's said, and then there's what we learn from what's actually happening.
Yeah.
And I think that's a powerful example of that. So if I'm hearing you right, you're saying that organization, you could have one of your stated values that we operate from soul health. You could have an orientation phase of your training that every single one of your field workers goes through and is high quality training and is really, really valuable. But when they're on the field and they observe in their leaders, national or global, that this is not how they operate.
Right.
It totally undermines it.
Yeah. Sure, you can take your day off. I never take my day off.
Yep.
But if you need a day off, you can take a day off.
Oh, man, what is that? That is laced with so much shame. If you really need the thing that we tell you do, but obviously I don't need.
Yeah.
Oh, man, that's such, there's so much that's laced with intent or meaning that's even beyond the words.
Yeah. But this is not a theme that's just part of this study. This is a human truth that we see in social and behavioral sciences all the time, that the little things you do are way more important than the big things you say, always, for people. Observing other people's behavior is where we take our cues, not from the things that they tell us.
I don't remember if this is a Forrest Gump reference, but the sorry is as sorry does, was that from Forrest Gump, or did I extrapolate from that?
Stupid is as stupid does.
Stupid is as stupid does. Okay, so I remember hearing that and being in a season where in one relationship there was a lot of verbal, oh, I'm so sorry, but behavior's not changing.
Yeah.
And I remember being like, I think sorry is as sorry does, not just, Anyway, so I love that.
Yeah.
It's a little sidebar there.
Yeah. And then lastly, this is no surprise, we've already talked about it, but relationship matters. The need for restorative and impartial relationships was the primary need identified in this study. So that could be companions, friends, it could be mentors, it could be spiritual directors, mental health professionals. we, all of us need guides in our lives to create safe space for the interior work that fosters soul health.
Yeah.
And what I will say about this study also is that we have these kinds of conversations with leaders and people in ministry all the time. We see this journey of transformation everywhere. You know, we're seeing not just in missionaries in the global South, it's really amplified in this study.
The volume
is dialed up. So we can see it much more clearly, but it's not really that this soul health journey is pretty typical for people working in ministry.
When we first mapped that out, I remember like sitting with big butcher block paper on the floor of your place in LA, and we were mapping out what we were hearing. And as this diagram emerged, I was like, that was me in church planting.
Yeah.
And that's every other person I talk to. But the options that exist for somebody in a more resourced environment versus somebody who left everything, has no other income, can't even afford a flight to come back to the home from the field, and can't get food on the table. Like those stories that you and Nicole heard from these actual verbatims bring me to tears every time I hear them. But you're right. The journey. We start with some things that are working, mixed, beautiful, animated ideas mixed with some things that got sideways somewhere along the way, gets wobbly to the point where there could be a severe enough disruption that we can't just keep going. And by God's grace, someone enters that picture as a guide. Somebody says, "How are you?" And they actually want to hear. Somebody says, "Me too." Somebody says, "You're not crazy." Somebody says, "There is a different way." And they start gently drawing us into rewriting those narratives. And thank God for Lisa and Kari and Lynn and other people in my life who were part of that in my season of disruption, and authors and others. But then you do move to this integration where you're abiding. And these words that we all talk about in ministry context. So it's not like oh wow, I never heard of that. But there's a lived experience of rootedness in the real-time connection with God that emerges from this different pathway, and the fruitfulness that comes from it is so different and beautiful. And anyway, well, then we become guides. What would you say if I'm going to go through each of those three phases? I want to know, what does Lacey want to say to somebody who is in any context? They could be in a global NGO, they could be in pastoral ministry somewhere, they could be a mom or a dad who is finding themselves in this discussion, or a corporate leader, whomever. What would you say to somebody who's in that maybe just barely wobbly place?
I think the thing that hit me the hardest in this study is how deep the stories of isolation were and how lonely they talked about being. And so I think what I would say to people in the first phase of this is, I'm sorry. You know, I feel like we've let them down. I personally can see my own just being kind of oblivious to what life is like to respond to that call and do that kind of work in the world that I value. I value that work. And so, I would say I'm sorry. And would want to encourage them that what they're experiencing is real. You know, it's not, and that it's okay to name it, and not keep trying to fight against it or suppress it.
You right now in this moment might be that first guide for somebody, saying maybe there's a different path.
Yeah.
And you're not taking on the whole journey, but somebody listening could be like, oh, it doesn't have to be this way.
Yeah.
Like, that's a cool thought.
It doesn't have to be this way. Yeah. Like, I would say I'm sorry, and it doesn't have to be this way. And that there are guides out there, and that it's okay. I think that, we hear about suspicion and confusion in these spaces and conversations a lot. And I think there is some fear around engaging with people who can offer support, spiritual directors or counselors, therapists. Yeah. But we need people to journey with us. We do. Yep. We're not meant to operate in isolation. And so I would encourage someone who's wanting to move into that second phase to try to open themselves up to having people journey with them. Yeah. You have to be vulnerable. You have to be able to be willing to share what's going on, and that's really hard.
Yeah.
So I would want to invite them as much as they're able to be courageous and in opening themselves up to having new relationships.
Yeah. Call somebody for coffee.
Yeah.
Can we have a conversation? Can we take a walk? And it's risky.
It is risky.
You feel like you're speaking another language, like to actually start to say these things.
Yeah.
Okay, well, what about for somebody who's in that, like, discombobulating, but now I have somebody who's helping me walk this path? What would you say to somebody who's in that center phase?
Oh, it's going to get so good.
I love that.
It's just, I'm excited for you because it's going to get so good. There's just so much, God is just going to meet them in such a beautiful way. And you're going to discover like a depth in this relationship that is just going to feel so new and life-giving.
Well, that is like the exact opposite of what I was thinking.
What were you going to say?
I was going to say, hang on tight, guys, because it could get worse before it gets better.
Oh, well, that's probably true, too. It's probably good to say both of those things.
Yeah, it's both. It does get so much better. And you're sort of like at this moment of opening up this Pandora's box of all of the things that you've been pushing down for so long. But the cool thing about Pandora's box as the Greek myth is the reason it was a famous mythology is that they opened the Pandora's box and all these, like, I don't know, terrible things came out. And they were so worried about the bad things that they shut the box.
Yeah.
And what was the one thing that was going to come out at the end of all of the mess was hope.
Yeah.
And that's what we run the risk of shutting the door to. If we don't let it be painful, maybe it gets hard. Maybe you pull one string and you find out it's connected to 4 other things. Like, shoulders down.
Yeah.
It's okay. God's got you. You've got guide or guides. Let it be open.
I think that's such a good word, and I love the pairing of both of the things that we would say. It reminds me like when I was going through a similar season in my life, and I had just sort of opened the Pandora's box. And I don't know, maybe 3 months into that season, I said to my spiritual director, I'm feeling good. Like, I think I'm coming to the other side of this. And she said, oh, well, I mean, I don't want to, influence you in any way, but I don't want you to be unprepared. It might take longer than this.
Than 3 months. We want such a quick fix.
It could take a year or several. She was right.
I know.
She was right.
Know.
But it yes.
Look at you now. And look at the journey. Yeah.
And we're still going. So.
And so finally, what would you say to people who are maybe tentatively in integration and they're not sure it's even trustworthy? Is it secure? Yeah. Is this really going to last? What would you say to that?
I think it's a long obedience in the same direction, right? You keep doing and you stay on the path. And you come back around and you become the guides for others, and you just stay in it. Yeah. You just stay in it.
Yeah. And then last shout out. There may be some who listening to our conversation who are part of these sending organizations.
I would say that the kind of relationships that that will be safe and will become guides for people in the field probably cannot be people who work for your organization. Even if you have designated people in those roles, there is a really, really deep fear that if they are honest, there's going to be some kind of consequence. Not maybe punishment, but really just a negative consequence. And it creates such a barrier from being able to engage in the kind of vulnerability that is really needed here. And so I know that's hard because you want to, as an organization, and they do want to provide every resource possible. And it makes sense to keep those resources internal for all kinds of reasons. But the safe outside third-party places are probably the only places where this kind of vulnerability can happen.
Mm-hmm. And encouraging that from the get-go is important. Yeah. Well, Lacey, as always, it's delightful to be with you.
I'm so happy to be here.
Learn more and more from you every time, and I'm excited for people to grab on to these findings in their context. And so, yeah, friends, however you're hearing this today, if you're in the wobbly zone, there is hope. Pay attention. Start looking around for a guide. If you're in the guide season, it could get worse before it gets better, but you have no idea how great it's going to be. And if you're on that side of integration, please keep and you'll be following the Lord's leading, but as you're noticing people around you, be willing to have that, hey, how are you, really kind of conversation. And you don't have to take on the full responsibility for what someone might need, but you could be a key part of them exiting a very dangerous and lonely and hard place. So anyway, always good to be with you, Lacey. Thanks for joining us. And can I read that poem that you shared with me?
Yes.
I just want to close with reading this also from John O'Donohue. I only read this for the first time last night, and it is beautiful. Man, this is a book of a journal. Yeah. Way to go. So this is a poem called For a New Beginning. So maybe you're on the cusp of a new beginning. In out-of-the-way places of the heart, where your thoughts never think to wander, this beginning has been quietly forming, waiting until you were ready to emerge. For a long time, it has watched your desire, feeling the emptiness growing inside you, noticing how you willed yourself on, still unable to leave what you had outgrown. It watched you play with the seduction of safety and the gray promises that sameness whispered, heard the woes of turmoil rise and relent, wondered, would you always live like this? Then the delight when your courage kindled and out you stepped onto new ground, your eyes young again with energy and dream, a path of plenitude opening before you. Though your destination is not yet clear, you can trust the promise of this opening. Unfurl yourself into the grace of beginning. That is at one, unfurl yourself into the grace of beginning that is at one with your life's desire. Awaken your spirit to adventure, hold nothing back. Learn to find ease in risk. Soon you will be home in a new rhythm, for your soul senses the world that awaits you. Don't we want everyone to experience that?
So.
May it be so. God bless.